All right, welcome back, Mike Farrell Sports Show. My name is Adam, and as always, the godfather of recruiting is on his own show. If not, why would he not be? Although I was afraid he wouldn't show up. He's pretty pissed off today, so I
Yeah,
wasn't quite sure if he'd make it. But he's back for another week. Mike Farrell, welcome back, my friend. How are you?
good. The heat gets me. Yeah, notice just waited to start recording after I was like this.
Yeah,
I think
no,
this
that's
is a
fine.
good start. This is a
Mike's
good start.
hydrating with what we don't know. I don't think that's really important, but
Oh, that's
uh,
coffee,
that's coffee. Fair
pure
enough.
black
Irish
coffee.
coffee. We're not sure.
No, 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 no. I
Okay,
wish.
not trying to start rumors here.
Yeah, but the heat gets me going, and you know, luckily I will say this: it's been a week so far, knock on wood, where there hasn't been a ton of quarterback hate. 2 weeks ago was Arch Manning.
Yeah.
And then last week into this week, leading into this week was Caleb Williams, but it's been pretty quiet. I even said something good about a quarterback with Anthony Richardson getting rid of the AR-15 moniker,
Yeah.
which I thought was appropriate. Which sucks for him. It's not his fault. I mean, those are his initials and his jersey number. But stepping away from that was probably a smart move.
Yeah, you appreciate the
But
self
we
awareness the kid has, right? To go, hey,
yeah,
wait a minute, you know
yeah,
what? Like, I get that maybe this isn't all on me, but you appreciate the self awareness and
he's
the
a good
folks around him who
good
obviously were
kid.
like, hey, man, like that's a good idea. The maturity level there, I think there was questions about his maturity last year, right? He was dancing in a hotel room and he did some things maybe off the field people shook their head at, but I think this kind of shows a little bit more about his maturity level.
He's a good kid too. I mean, the ceiling is just so high there, and every time I do any sort of quarterback thing, he comes up. Even when I was predicting the records of, I did that earlier this week. I had Billy Napier going 6-6 in his first year because it's such a mess that he's inherited. And the comments are, well, if they are, well, I can't call him that anymore. If Anthony Richardson plays, to his potential, 6-6 isn't going to happen. They could go 9-3 or 10-2. And I said, yeah. And I love the kid. I think his potential, his ceiling is probably the highest of any quarterback out there. Maybe Will Levis, but he has to do it first. But the
Yeah.
the off-field awareness is excellent. And I guess that segues into the quarterback rankings, which still lives on. It got 2.8 million views on Facebook and Instagram, which was funny because usually when I scroll through Facebook and Instagram, I either have a really attractive TikToker
Okay.
in my in my reels.
We'll get back to
Um,
that.
yeah, we can, which gets like 11 million, or I get like an animal one because
Fair. Okay.
I like animals, or a shark one. I like sharks and orcas and stuff, or some sports one that's viral. And then I was scrolling through and I saw mine, and I thought it was a joke. That somebody was punking me. And quarterbacks. I guess the point of this is I get a lot of attractive females in my feed. Like that's
Mike,
well,
the algorithm rhythm doesn't lie, my friend.
well, that's what we're going to take away from this, aren't we? We're not going to talk
Yeah.
about Mike's like of animals and great whites and orcas. It's going to be all about that. But the second part being quarterbacks move the needle. So I could pop that quarterback list up again if I wanted to on Twitter, and it would blow up again. And I had Bryce Young 1, C.J. Stroud 2, and then Caleb Williams 3, and there's a huge drop off after the top two. It's huge.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so there are some circles where the word overrated is being thrown in the same sentence with Caleb Williams. Your thoughts on that? Obviously, well, first let's do this. We should address this first because it's going to come across like, hey, here's Mike punching back. But I'll throw this on screen on YouTube. Caleb Williams owns Mike. You guys had a little back and forth on Twitter, and he quote tweeted you and basically said, "I'm never coming on your show for your clicks and yada yada yada."
Right, right.
And you actually responded back, which I thought pretty tongue in cheek around, "Hey, that's a pretty good own. I've seen better, but not so bad after all." So Caleb Williams owns you. True or false? Mike is so upset about that he just left the screen. He's back though.
No, you know what? I got a robocall, and I don't know how
Oh
to
no.
stop them. You can't
Yeah.
stop them. It's impossible, and they interrupt StreamYard because you block one number and it'll come from a different number. So
Mike's pissed off again. Here
robocalls.
we go. Another pissed
Well,
off Mike item.
but But yeah, I don't know if he owned me. Like it was
Okay.
interesting to see him reply. I wasn't looking for a reply from him. You know, honestly, people don't believe this. I wasn't looking for Arch Manning to go viral or anything like that, or be contacted by a bunch of national media outlets about it. But when I saw that he commented on it, I'm like, all right, well, listen, here's an opportunity for you to talk because him and his dad have not talked together. His dad says one thing to the LA Times, and then the kid
Hmm.
refutes it, and they're not on the same page. And then he said, I don't want to do one of your stupid high school interviews and all that stuff. And it's funny to me because when some of these quarterbacks, or not even quarterbacks, just big time superstars in college football, I'm not going to say divas, I will say big time stars. When they're younger, they're all looking for attention. They're all clamoring. They all want to follow back. They all want an article written. They want a dumb high school interview, right? And they beg for it. And then when they reach a level of success, which we give them, with a 5-star rating or whatever, and then obviously that's validated by all the offers and the attention and stuff like that, then they think they're dumb high school interviews. So, and they are dumb. I mean, it's the same questions over and over again. I mean, this is why I don't do
Fair.
recruiting updates anymore. How'd you like your visit? It was good.
They showed
What stood
love.
out? Yeah, they showed love. What stood out? It was a
Coaches,
family
man. Coaches seem
atmosphere.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the
Yeah.
coaches, the family atmosphere. They really have a plan for me in place as to how I could impact there. I could see myself going there.
Going there. Yeah.
Um, are you going to go back? Yep. Who's your top 5? I don't have one, but they're up there. And then that's the article. I could just put a different name at the top and just use those quotes.
Fair
So
enough.
they are dumb. They're completely dumb high school interviews, Caleb. You are absolutely right.
Well, I mean, let's just go to the story really quickly for those who don't know. Caleb Williams' dad had some quotes. I don't have them in front of me, so I'm gonna paraphrase here, but essentially saying, "Hey, Caleb's first intention was always to come back to Oklahoma. He entered the portal so he could come back to Oklahoma. That seems super counterintuitive, right? You don't go in the portal to come back to a school. Then the spin was, well, he entered the portal just to come back to Oklahoma, and then Oklahoma fans got all over him. And the next day, Oklahoma signs Dylan Gabriel. And so I guess Oklahoma didn't want Caleb, so he had no choice but to leave. That was kind of the spin. Seems super counterintuitive to anything you do, right? If you're in the portal, you're in the portal for a reason. If you want to stay at Oklahoma, you can stay at Oklahoma. So that seemed counterintuitive. You sort of pointed out, hey, I don't buy a word of that, and that's kind of what caused Caleb to jump in the fray and start throwing shots at high school interviews and demanding to never come on your show again.
Yes, which he was never on it in the first place. And I don't understand why he would do it anyways. I mean, it was just an offer. But I will say there's one bit of truth there. They didn't go in the portal. Oklahoma was still under consideration. And I don't have a problem with a kid going into the portal um, and shopping around. I said Bryce Young should go in the portal after last year. Just why not? It doesn't hurt anything. There's no penalty to it. Alabama's not going to yank his scholarship. Oklahoma wasn't going to yank Caleb Williams' scholarship. Get in there, see what materializes, and what discussions are made about NIL and other things that are important to you, quarterback development at the NFL level. So I do believe that they went in the portal and Oklahoma was still under consideration. I don't believe they went in and they knew they were going to go to USC and Lincoln Riley from the get-go because it took a long time for make a decision. I don't believe that the fans had anything to do with it, and that's kind of what I pointed out. I mean, and I also don't believe you can possibly think on this planet in 2022 that you can go in the portal and that the team is not going to cover their butt by getting another quarterback.
Yeah.
That thought process cannot exist. Now, that may be what Carl thinks and that may be what Caleb thinks, but it's just not realistic. So, of course, they got another quarterback. Of course, the fans weren't happy. That's life. But I do believe he was considering Oklahoma, and maybe some of the other things in there were true. Like Oklahoma, didn't really provide the vision for his NFL development and all that stuff. But I don't know. I paraphrased. People say, "Oh, that's." Did you reference the LA Times? You misquoted. You paraphrased. Yeah, I did. it's horrible journalistic integrity. I don't. I'm. I'm not the poster child for journalistic integrity. What I do is I create discussion, and I try to engage college football fans and make things fun. Now, I wasn't doing it to try to stir the pot. I wasn't doing it to serve some agenda, but I was certainly upset at any inkling and reference that the fans might have driven him away. That's just, I mean, come on. The first pick he throws at USC is going to get a bunch of hate on social media. That's the way it is.
Yeah. Well, then let's get back to the question at hand then. So you had him 3 on your quarterback chart, and then the word overrated has kind of crept into the conversation. Is he overrated? I mean, in your opinion, is there an overrating there? Is it, is he a system quarterback with Lincoln Riley? I guess where do you feel like he slots in now? And is 3 too high for him on that list?
Well, from a ceiling perspective, he's very high. And I think a lot of these, quarterback rankings come from a combination of ceiling, a combination of what we expect to happen, and a combination of what we see. We saw Bryce Young win the Heisman last year. We saw C.J. Stroud come on, late in the season and really develop into a, potential number 1 overall draft pick. With Caleb Williams, we have a freshman season to go on. He was electric and showed that ability to run and throw and keep defenses off balance. Should he be 3? You could make a case for Tyler Van Dyke. You could make a case for Sam Hartman. You could make a case for Hendon Hooker. You could make a case for other guys that had better numbers last year. Overrated, I don't think so. My concern about Caleb Williams is size. He's not the biggest guy in the world. And this is another thing. This goes back to, this bad blood goes back. When I was doing quarterback comparisons in that class, what class was it? 2021, I believe. I compared him to Tyrod Taylor. It didn't go over well in the Williams family. Tyrod Taylor was a 5-star quarterback. Tyrod Taylor was very, very good at Virginia Tech. Tyrod Taylor was drafted, I don't know, 3rd round maybe, because he didn't have great size, but he had a really good arm and a good feel for when to run and when to pass. Tyrod Taylor is not a elite starting quarterback in the NFL, but he's a solid backup, and he's a starter when you need him to be. And that's what I saw from Caleb Williams. And then everybody's like, well, how could he be a 5-star? I go, this is a 5-star based on a combination of college and NFL, but mostly, college and how they project. And, with Kyler Murray being drafted number 1 overall and Baker being drafted number 1 overall, size is not as big of an issue anymore. I think it's coming back to the forefront, and that's what I worry about. He's just not the biggest quarterback in the world. And, durability and those things are going to be coming into question. But overrated, I don't really know how you can make a case based on what I just said for anybody else to be number 3.
What kind of season do you think he'll have out at USC? Do you have any projections, or what do you want to see him sort of improve? I know he played a little bit, obviously, his freshman year, and Spencer Rattler, he became, sort of the god because Rattler was vilified by fans out there, right? So what do you want to see from him in year 2 as he takes over at USC?
Yeah, so this is funny too, because you didn't even plan to do this, but it's a good segue. So I've been working with a math guy. I'm not a math guy. I'm a SAT for old school people, and I don't know if it's back in 1600, but I'm more of a, literal person than a math guy. But I got with a math guy, and I came up with this idea called the FSP, Farrell Statistical Projection. Let's come up with a way to gauge how guys are going to perform next season, and you come up with the math equation. We could tweak it. We could look at it. We did that for months. And then we have modifiers for new coach, new system, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback coach, new wide receiver coach, whatever. And it's for the skill positions only. So I will be sharing his projections. They're good. His projections are going to be very good, and he's going to have a really good season for USC because they added Dye at running back, because they added Addison at wide receiver, because they put so many pieces together around him that's going to help. He had talent at Oklahoma, but he was a true freshman. That second year in the system with those pieces around him changes his modifier. So I think he's going to have a New York appearance type of season. Not a Heisman winning season, but I think he could potentially total 50 touchdowns between rushing and passing. That's how big a year he could have.
How much do you think what happens at Oklahoma this year will impact what people think about Caleb Williams? Obviously, their offense is way different now. Jeff Lebby runs super fast, hurry up. You saw it at UCF. You saw it at Ole Miss. Dylan Gabriel, again, had some great years at UCF as a pretty talented quarterback. How much of what they do at Oklahoma do you think will impact what people think about Caleb Williams? I.e., will they go, hey, we're better without him? Like, look at the stat, because they're going to put up stats, right? Oklahoma's going to put up stats. That's what Lebby does. That's what Dylan Gabriel does. They're going to put numbers on the board, and numbers aren't everything. But do you think what they do at Oklahoma will impact how people feel about Caleb at USC?
Yeah, because one or two things could happen. Dylan Gabriel could go in and put up monster numbers, and everybody's going to say, "Well, look, every Oklahoma quarterback puts up big numbers. It's that's what we do." Caleb Williams was a benefactor of the system, and the system's in place. You just replace Lincoln Riley with Jeff Lebby, or if they struggle, which I'm leaning more towards struggle because there's so many changes there at Oklahoma offensively. And you always have a little bit of a learning process with a new head coach, a new coordinator. Then people are going to say, Oklahoma fans will never say this. They'll never say he's good. But USC fans and others around the nation will go, wow, they really lost out on Caleb Williams because look at what he's doing at USC. He's putting up major numbers, and Oklahoma really, lost him, and that was bad. So when he initially went into the portal and then decided to go to USC, the national perspective and the fan perspective was, wow, this is a big blow. The Oklahoma perspective is we like Dylan Gabriel. Look at the numbers he put up at UCF years and years ago. It will be fine. Now we're going to see if they're going to be fine because it's very thin at quarterback there. And, for the first time in a very long time, they don't have Lincoln Riley either as a coordinator or head coach.
Yeah, look, you can see if you're watching on YouTube, you can see behind me, I cover UCF. I will tell you this, Oklahoma fans, look up Dylan Gabriel's stats, fourth quarter, close ball games. When UCF was rolling, he was putting up numbers, but close ball games, a 3rd and 6 when they they're down by 3 and need to get a first down. Check out some of those stats, and we'll check back and see how you feel about Dylan Gabriel at that point. But all this, Mike, comes really because of one reason, right? That's the transfer portal, which again is the new norm in college football. Everyone's getting used to it. It's a thing, but a couple of tweaks have been sort of proposed, or some options are being talked about out there. One of them is sort of a window of time, I guess. You can enter the portal and it's going to sort of truncate when you can and can't get in there. I know that your new, maybe not new, but your Twitter persona of late has been pissed off, Mike. I think this transfer portal thing has you a little bit salty today.
It does because, I thought about this, the transfer portals right now, 365. It's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You can go in anytime you want. Obviously, there's parameters as to when you can go in and be eligible for the next season. The SEC date, February 1st to go SEC, and then it's May 1st for everybody else. And then I thought about it. I'm like, this is kind of crazy. This is a little ridiculous. I mean, we're checking the portal over and over again every day, even in, the heat of July or, during the season in October, and anybody could jump in at any time. And the randomness of it was overwhelming, especially when the end of the season comes or you head into the off season or you head into the end of spring ball. Then it's just like a deluge of prospects going in there, and it's just hard to keep up with. And I'm keeping up with it just from my guy Mark Rashanek runs the Farrell portal handle, and he's keeping up with it just from a perspective of tweets and stuff. Coaches have to keep up with it with a perspective of how does this guy fit my roster? Should I recruit him? I got to do a background check on him. Why is he leaving? 80,000 questions need to be answered about every kid going to the portal. So when 100 go in a week, it's overwhelming for them. So I thought, let's come up with some parameters in our head. And then I couldn't think of the times and the proper times. So a 60-day window, it's not going to help things. It's going to make, you're essentially taking, you've got a smart car and you got 15 fat people.
That's a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot of fat people.
Yeah,
so you could put one fat person in the smart car and then take them where they need to be and then come back and pick up the second fat person. Now you're taking all 15 fat people and put them in a smart car at the same time. Something's going to blow up. So 60 days is not a good thing. And what timing do you do it? At the end, after the championship games in December, right before the early signing period, right before the JUCO signing period, right when in-home visits are occurring and recruiting's heating up more than any. I just don't think it's the right solution. But the problem is, I'm being a problem identifier and not a problem solver. I don't know what the right solution is. I keep going back to the current situation being the right one. And now there's discussions of no more one-time transfer rules.
Yeah.
You can transfer anytime, as many times as you want, which is a complete nightmare. It's great for us who cover the portal that it's going to be constant news. His kids will dip in, dip out, and this is his 17th entry into the portal. But that's not good for college football at all. So again, I think they try to think of smart stuff. I assume they get in a room together with coffee or Irish coffee, and then they come up with just the dumbest ideas ever, and it's just consistently occurring. So I don't know where this idea came from, why, if it's 60 days at the end of the season and then another 2-week period at the end of spring ball. But honestly, the more I think about it, the more the current system should stay 365 anytime you want. I think there should be a delay. I think if you go in, you shouldn't be put in. So let's say you fill out the paperwork. I think there should be like a 1 week, let's chill period. And then after a week, you go back to the person and say, "Do you still want to go in?" I think that's smart because it gives them a time to think. So if they're coming off a bad practice or the coach yelled at them, or they're upset about something, they jump in the portal, and then all of a sudden they can't take that back. I think they could jump in and then have a week to think about it. That would be smarter than 60 days.
Well, two things from this. One, I can't wait to see your algorithm now after you said fat people too many times. I'm sure your phone picked that up. So keep us updated on that algorithm. And secondly,
there go all the attractive.
You're about to lose that in a hurry. Here's the other thing. Now, if you're a coach, not only do you have to vet out, who's in the portal, does that make sense for my team? Now you got to also re-recruit the guys on your roster, right? Hey, you good? You're all right. Everything's gonna be okay. Hey, I got plans for you. So you're basically recruiting nonstop at that point. If you took a straw poll, a blind poll of 130, whatever it is, FBS coaches, how do you think they would vote? What do you think they would? What do you think the majority would fall in terms of how they want to handle portal windows, open season, 3 days after the season's done? You got to decide, and that's it. How do you think coaches, if they got a choice and a voice in this, would decide?
All right, I'm going to give you the answer to that and NIL, and we're going to take 130 coaches, and we're going to ask them, what would your solution be for the portal and NIL? The portal would be, let's go back to the old way. You have to sit out a year. None of this immediate transfer stuff, which is completely unfair because coaches can leave anytime they want without penalty. But that's what they want. They want what it was before, which is complete control. So let's say they can't have that. Out of the 130 coaches, I think they would want multiple windows, not just one. I think they want sort of a recruiting calendar like we have with high school. You get a dead period, you get a quiet period, you get a recruiting period, you get a dead period. Throughout the year, come up with those standards for the portal itself, not for actively recruiting, but from this period to this period, you can go in, but you have to wait 2 weeks before you're allowed to, get through. From this period to this period, you can go in, like maybe at the end of the championship games, you can go in and you're immediately eligible. Because, listen, the season's over, you've made your decision, whatever. From this period to this period, it's a 1 week. I think they would like a calendar rather than just taking 365 days and trying to squeeze it into 60 days and having a smart car disaster. NIL, the answer to every one of those coaches, 130, would be get rid of it. I hate it. And they will never admit it. Dabo's the only one who's sort of been honest in any way, shape, or form. He's getting slammed for it.
He gets killed for it. He gets hammered for it.
Because you can't be honest in this day and age. You just can't. Listen, we all know they deserve to get paid. Players deserve to get paid. We're making millions and millions off of them. But I think with that has to come some sort of control. It's been all control from the college athletic standpoint. They can run you off the team. They can not renew your scholarship. They could yank offers. It's all control from college. Now, with NIL, it's all control from players. You need to have some sort of checks and balances. And by that, I mean, you know, with NIL, they deserve to make money, but if you're going to pay them, treat them as employees. Then make it clear to them, listen, okay, you're making money. I can fire you. I can lay you off. I can, well, they already do suspend them, but there's ramifications with being compensated for anything. And,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I think those ramifications aren't in place right now. Um, you know, Florida cut 3 players a month ago, and all everybody talked about was how Billy Napier, is a horrible person coming in and
Sunbelt
cutting,
Billy.
and
Yeah.
and and that's not fair. So I think NIL checks and balances. Okay, great. You could make this type of money. First of all, I have to think that they have to come up with a way to cap recruits. I don't believe
Yes.
these recruit numbers. We've talked about this before. I don't believe Nico's making $8 million. I don't think Rashada got $9.5 million from Miami. I saw a graphic the other day that compared him to the NFL salaries of young quarterbacks. Rashada's making more than Trevor Lawrence. And
Correct.
I laughed. It's not happening. That's not true. But I think you have to limit it to current players on the roster, um, and not do this NIL Texas A&M accusation of buying recruits. That's where it gets shady. Get them on campus and then get them as many deals as possible.
Yeah.
But I just don't think you can have any NIL deals in place when they're high school students.
Well, Texas Tech just announced that basically everybody on their team is going to get, I think
Yep.
it's a Matador Club they call it. Everyone's going to get whatever that final financial figure is. I'm like, all right, since I've got you and a microphone in front of me and no one can quiet this thing, here's a crazy idea I want to throw at you. You tell me if you think this would work or not. When you come out of high school and you're picking schools, you pick a top 3. You go to the first one, right? You go to your number 1 school as always, and then the other 2 schools on your list. If at any time in your college career you want to transfer, you get a free transfer to those other 2 schools. If you decide, hey, you know what, I don't want to go to any of these 3 schools, I want to go to school X, then you got to wait or you got to sit out a year. So essentially, you're picking your top 3 and saying, these are the 3 I'm going to. You get a free transfer to either the other 2 schools if you don't like school 1. But if you go to a 4th or 5th school on your list, then you got to sit out a year.
Not bad, but I can poke a lot of holes in that.
Well, of course, yes.
And the biggest one would be, oh, well, how can you hold me to a decision I was making when I was 17? I'm 20 now. I've played
Yeah.
3 years at one university. How am I stuck looking at the other 2 schools when I was such a different person so many years ago? Secondly, you would ruin all these awesome announcements where kids take the jersey and throw it
Well, now you hold
aside.
up 3 hats, Mike. More hats, more merch, more product. You know what I mean? A triple jersey at this point,
There was just a video that came out. A kid committed to Georgia, and I
I
like
saw
this kid.
that.
I really do quite a bit.
I
But
saw this kid. Yeah.
he had North Carolina up there, and he's just
Yep.
like, no, it's like that would ruin that funness
Sure.
of slamming a team, which is unnecessary. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. But the other part of it too is I keep thinking there's got to be some sort of model here where we can mirror what the Major League Baseball and the NHL do,
Okay.
which is make kids draft eligible out of high school, um, and then place them where you want to place them, or advise them. Because here's the thing, and I know more about NHL than I do about Major League Baseball, but those kids are allowed to have family advisors and
Okay.
representatives at a very, very young age. So they come out of a prep school or they come out of a junior league or whatever, and they get drafted 6th overall by the Buffalo Sabres. Okay. And the Buffalo Sabres really have a say in how many years you're going to stay at
Mm-hmm.
college based on your development, or in, a minor league system. But they also have a say in what smart decisions you're going to make in your life. I mean, okay, we drafted you, and a lot of those kids become draft eligible after 1 year of college, so they've already made their college choices. But I think allowing that advisory level at a young age and saying, okay, we're the Baltimore Ravens. We've picked um, Arch Manning as our number 1 pick. We're going to work with the family to figure out what the best fit for him, or the best fit. That something in my head says that would be really cool and beneficial. Now, what you're saying is never going to happen. What I'm saying is never going to happen. It's kind of a free for all. You can't limit choice because the genie's out of the bottle. The problem is, anything you say now or do now with NIL is walking it back. You're going to be subject to lawsuits. What you suggest is that kids get 3 schools. That's going to be, people are going to sue like crazy. It's just, unfortunately, they've let NIL get out of hand, and now there's just no way to stuff it back in. I don't know.
Well,
I think
there's consequences.
We
You're seeing on Twitter, there's consequences, right? You're seeing on Twitter, I think it's Darren Heitner is saying that there are some kids who haven't been paid for their deals now, and they're trying to figure out how they go about recouping that money. Do they get a lawyer they didn't obviously think about in advance? There's tax ramifications that if you don't have somebody on your side, you have no idea you owe taxes, and all of a sudden you sign this big deal and IRS is at your door. I mean, I think now you're getting to that 12-month mark of NIL, and those ugly stories are starting to pop up a little bit more and more. You're hearing more and more about them, and they're going to get worse, Mike. You and I both know they're going to get worse, right? There's going to be a kid who thought he committed to a school to get X amount of money, gets to the school and recognizes, hey, you're not getting that money. And that's going to become a thing at that point in time. Schools are going to get blackballed. Collectives are going to get blackballed. It's going to be a much bigger thing. And you're starting to see some of that creep out now.
And again, I blame the NCAA for not having a plan in place here, because what they waited for the government to intervene and make this, a trust issue and all that stuff. And they wanted federal, legislation to be passed to limit this. It never happened. Then they came up with this plan, Bowlesby and his committee, and they came up with this plan, which wasn't a bad plan to limit things. And they threw that aside because the state started allowing NIL. And there were like 6 states that said yes. And then they rushed in to react this and just started it without any plan in place. So essentially they jumped out of an airplane, no parachute, no plan on how to get down to earth. And now it's tumbling and crashing. And all of those things you mentioned are going to happen. Kids are going to be able to sue universities. Universities are going to be able to sue kids because the countersuits. Okay, so let's say Quinn Ewers goes to Texas. Let's say he doesn't win the starting job. Say Hudson Card wins it. Let's say Quinn Ewers doesn't play. Let's say the NCAA doesn't limit the transfers. Eliminate the transfers. He's already had his bite at the apple. He's going to have to sit out a year if he does transfer. His brand has been diminished because he's on his second transfer now, and he's no longer, the guy who's all those NIL deals are in place, and those NIL people are all saying, well, we're not going to pay you for this, that, and the other. You're not starting. You're not bringing any value. He could potentially sue, because promises were made, whether contractually or verbally. Yep. And then they could counter sue, and they say, we're suing Quinn Ewers for sucking. You suck.
Sure. Yeah.
You didn't win the job. That's the basis of our suit. And that's where things get really contentious and ugly. I don't really have a solution, but I do know that you can't let things go. I was going to use my fat person analogy again. Okay, so I'm trying to think of this because I want more fat reels in my Facebook
algorithm. Sure.
Okay, so you decided the great idea of stuff in 15 of it in a smart car, but let's take a bathroom break. Oh my gosh, no, you can't. You got to keep going and going and going, because if you stop and let everybody out, then everybody's got to get back in, and it's just a nightmare. You got to just, if you're going to make a poor decision, you got to push through. And now we're at the point where you just can't stop. But we're also at the point where you can't stop for a bathroom break. And your smart car is going to be a little mess. It's going to be a mess.
Well, I can't wait, Mike, I can't wait for the first holdout, right? Like, because here's the thing, you're talking about schools and players, but schools, quote unquote, air quotes here, are not involved in this, right? They're not offering NIL deals. They're just the places you go, right? So take a University of Miami where you have John Ruiz, who is the life wallet guy, who's the guy who is the big money person sort of pulling the strings on these NIL deals, right? If I'm the starting running back and, I signed a deal with him for, $50K, and all of a sudden midway through the season, I'm Heisman candidate, right? Hey, I'm not I want to renegotiate. Like when are kids going to start holding out? When are they going to start saying, hey, I want more money? I mean, you saw it a little bit, I think, with the basketball program at Miami. I think it was Isaiah Wong who essentially said, hey, I'm worth more than this too. I think it's such a Pandora's box. And that's the challenge is now you're going to invite a third party in, which is the NIL, sponsor in this case, the school, the kid, and then everyone's going to be telling on everybody, Mike. It's going to be that triangle of everyone's telling on everybody, and that first court decision is going to be fantastic to watch because it's going to implode, and we're all going to sit there like this, just salivating at all the juicy details coming out.
And the other thing too is you've got roster disparity, like crazy roster disparity. You mentioned the Texas Tech deal. Every player gets this, that, and the other. But let's say Arch Manning decided to go to Texas Tech. Okay, you think he's going to be lumped in with the others? No, he's going to make 10 times, 100 million times more than anybody else. Then you're going to have disgruntled players who are better. Will Anderson is a great kid. He's a very, very, good head on his shoulders, smart. Bryce Young's making 10 times more than he is. Now, if Will Anderson was a malcontent, that would be a problem. Or flip it around. Let's say Will Anderson is the best player in college football, which I believe he is. Let's say he's making 10 times more than the quarterback. Let's say, it's Eli Holstein is the quarterback, and he's okay. Then you've got the opposite. It's just, how do you keep everybody happy? And you can't. So in a structure, in a corporate structure, people don't know what the others make, supposedly, right? You work at a company, you're not supposed to know what your boss makes, but there's tiers.
Yep.
You're supposed to make less than your boss, and you're okay with that because he's your boss. Now,
well, there's job descriptions. There's job descriptions, and there's pay attached to the job. Like the head of the mailroom doesn't make what the the CFO makes, right? So the long snapper isn't going to make what the starting quarterback makes. There's pay structures that are transparent to you when you sign on for that.
Yes, but there's no transparency here.
Fair, absolutely. That's the point.
And the long snapper is not a great example because okay, what about the starting cornerback? Let's say Elias Ricks at Alabama. Potential top 10 NFL draft pick. He comes over from LSU. Blah blah blah. His job description in his head is that he should make as much money as everybody else. There's a feeling of that. So if you ran a company where everybody thought they should get as much money as possible and everybody thought they should be making more than the people ahead of them, that's a bit of a nightmare. It leads to a morale problem. It leads to an organizational problem. You're not going to listen to your boss. It's bad. And the boss here is Nick Saban. Yeah. When are we going to come to a day? And I forget who it was. I think it was Jimbo who said, this is going to really cause a lot of firing of coaches. No, yes, it's going to. Everything does. This is going to cause coaches to say, forget this. I want to go to the NFL. I don't want to be here. This is just unmanageable. I'd rather go where they're professionals, where they have job descriptions, where they have tiers of pay, where everything is sort of collectively bargained and you've got agents representing each player. I'd rather be a coach. Nick Saban would probably, if things got crazy out of control, go back to the Dolphins where he was very unsuccessful than deal with this garbage.
Well, you mentioned Jimbo, Nick. Let's transition there. Obviously, for those who've lived under a rock over the last couple of months, Jimbo with an all-time presser, basically calling out Nick Saban and threatening to let skeletons out of closets and do whatever it is that he can do based off comments Nick made about Texas A&M buying players. SEC media days are going on as you and I are recording this, Mike. Where are Jimbo and Nick at these days? Are they friends? Are they enemies? Are they frenemies? Are we getting closer to a resolution? Or can we expect some more fireworks here? Because let's be honest, that's what we want.
Yeah, there'll be more. I think they calmed down. I think Saban said something he shouldn't have said because he can think it. Everybody can think it, but saying it out loud is completely different. Just like Dabo saying that NIL is not good for college football. You can think that all you want. You can go to bed with that thought, but you can't say it out loud. And you can't say what Saban said out loud. And honestly, I disagree with what he said because, if you lump and simplify everything and say that kids are being bought, it demeans the efforts of the coaches and all the time they spend away from their family and all the effort they put into recruiting these kids for 4 years, all down to a dollar sign. So I completely disagree with what he said. He walked it back. He backpedaled this week. He said everything's fine. We're friends. No, they don't like each other. They never have liked each other. There's clearly something there. Now, for Jimbo to say skeletons, no, I can guarantee you this. I don't know any skeletons, but I can guarantee you in my head, there's a whole lot more in Jimbo's closet than there is in Nick Saban's closet. Just
Yeah.
hunch, feeling. So be careful what you
Okay.
say and do in regards to skeletons, because that's what we want. We want Nick Saban to come out and say, "Oh, Jimbo did this," and Jimbo to say, "Nick did that." That's what we want.
Oh yeah.
But they'll both lose if they do that.
Yeah, the Jimbo defense. And this is a terrible analogy because I recognize the character of these two individuals
Is
are
it
way
fat
different.
people? Is it fat
It's
people?
not. It's Jimbo reminded me of like Lance Armstrong. When you did something wrong, just deny, yell, scream the loudest, like, and that's got Jimbo came out so hot in that press conference. It almost made me go, okay, what's he hiding? Because
Yeah.
he is so mad about this. It's
Yep.
like the Lance Armstrong defense, like just yell and scream and threaten everybody else, and hope that sort of keeps people at bay so they don't come check on you. Like when I first saw that, I was like, well, Jimbo did something. There's something in this Jimbo closet because why is he so mad about this?
What is it? Me thinks you protest too much. Is that what it is?
Yes.
That's what
Yeah.
the friends turn. Yeah, he really came out like, and I get it. Like, I get the anger, but yeah, Saban's got to temper what he says. Jimbo's got to temper what he says. But listen, if people accuse me of doing something and I'm so emphatically like defending myself to the point where people stopped asking and I'm still defending myself, yeah, something's there.
Yeah. Well, maybe one of these guys, probably not, will end up on a list one day, Mike. And you put out a list this week that I thought was really interesting because it's a nice trip down memory lane for those folks. Coaches who should have never been fired. So the Mike Farrell top 5 coaches who should not have been fired. And you positioned Bo Pelini, the now beleaguered former Nebraska coach, at the number 1 spot. And that prompted a lot of reaction from folks. I was actually surprised at how many people kind of reacted to that. So for those who aren't looking on screen, you have Pelini 1, Phil Fulmer 2, Mac Brown 3, Mike Leach 4, and we don't worry about Charles Durrell at 5. What made Bo number 1 for you as you thought about coaches who shouldn't be fired?
Yeah, and we don't really even worry about 2, 3, 4 either. I mean,
Fair.
People talked about Mac Brown being forced out, and they talked about Mike Leach, and, being fired for cause, and Adam James and all that stuff. Philip Fulmer, but really it was Pelini. And the reason for that is because, people thought it should be Frank Solich. And the reason I didn't put Frank Solich on there is because Frank Solich was very successful in following Tom Osborne. They made a mistake in firing. Absolutely. He should have been, retained. But they wanted to, Bill Callahan, they wanted to make a splash. They wanted to improve recruiting. They started to get desperate at the time where recruiting was starting to become national, and Callahan actually, to his credit, got them recruits from California. I mean, the Nebraska fans will remember the name Marlon Lucky forever. He did a good job, and Solich was more the Tom Osborne focused. But the problem is Callahan was a massive failure. But then they hired Pelini, and he got them back. They were in the 2009, championship game against Texas, which they got robbed of. They were winning 9, 10 games every season. He got them back. So they slipped, but they got back. And then they did it again. They fired a guy. Now, again, he's obtuse, is what I call him. He's very, very polarizing. He's not a freaking friendly, nice person. Sure, he might have been an embarrassment to the university in some respects, but he won. And it's Mike Riley. It didn't work out, and Scott Frost hasn't worked out. Now you're 3-9, and now you're crowing and bragging about how you lost games by less than 10 points. That's your bragging point. Look at it, we took Oklahoma to the wire. Look at, we didn't get blown out by Ohio State. Who cares? Nobody cares about that stuff. You guys were winning 9, 10 games every year with bad Bo. So that's why I had him number 1. But the most responses were, Frank Solich should be there, or Pelini had to go. They just made the wrong hire. But Derek Dooley wasn't a good hire after Phil Fulmer.
No.
Charlie Strong wasn't a good replacement for Mac Brown. You can't blame the hire, and say, well, we should have fired him, but we should have hired somebody better. No, you blame the fire. And Bo Pelini, I'm not saying he'd still be there today, but I'm thinking that Nebraska fans really would love to win 10 games in the season again. and they would have a completely different attitude nationally about whether they're still a national power with Bo Pelini.
Yeah, and you mentioned some names there. It's really tough to be the guy that follows the guy, right? Like you mentioned a lot of legendary coaches, Tom Osborne. It's tough to be the guy that follows the guy. Solich did a nice job at that, right? And kept that program sort of running. But I think it's the word I'd use, Mike, is greed, right? Like it feels like everybody's like, "Hey, we're winning 8 or 9 games. We should win 10 or 11." We've got we're scoring 20 points a game. We should score 30. It feels like
Yep.
there's a lot of like greedy. We've got to make a change just for the sake of making a change, or we've got to keep up with the Joneses. When in reality, sometimes playing the long game can play out for you. Now that's a slippery slope because if you play the long game too long, you get left behind in a hurry. Before you know it, you're sitting back on where'd everybody go. But I think there's kind of a counterbalance, between how that works. And Nebraska's also been through a lot of AD hires too. It feels like the AD chair has been sort of revolving from some respects as well. And there hasn't just been a lot of consistency in terms of what it is I think that they're looking for, what they're trying to be. Now, the Scott Frost thing was, let's get back to old school Nebraska. Let's get back to the black shirts, and we're gonna recruit the walk-ons, and we're gonna own Nebraska. And here you are, in what, year 5 of Frost, where he's taken numerous pay cuts, fired most of his staff, and to your point, Bo Pelini looks like a vision in a desert at this point with what he was able to accomplish at Nebraska.
Yeah, and it's intriguing when you think about Nebraska because you're never going to get back to where you were. Miami could, Tennessee maybe, Nebraska can't. Geographically, it's just not going to happen. It's just not possible. We're in a day and age of national recruiting now, and I've seen theories as to why Nebraska is not getting the dominant athletes that they used to, and one of them was hilarious. The decline of the farming industry was one theory. So I'm not even going to get into that, but that's not it. Another was, we have nice lakes in Nebraska, but we don't have an ocean, so we can't recruit kids from California. I'm not going to get into that one either. I mean, these are just fans. Some of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. What it is national recruiting, and still to get to Lincoln, Nebraska, it's difficult in 2022. Now, again, as a kid, I was expecting by now we would have a transporter, Star Trek, and we'd be able to just beam ourselves, beam me up, Scotty, to where we need to be. No, travel is probably as bad as ever, and it's harder than ever to get any place.
Not worse.
You're in Orlando. There's direct flights there, but you want to sit in Orlando security for 3.5 hours. You want to just lay down and die. And that's a real city. I mean, it's not that Lincoln's not a real city. It's just harder to get to. There aren't as many direct flights there. So I'm just saying that's one example of national recruiting is like, it's harder to get these kids on campus, even on official visits. It's more arduous to get them up there. When they do get there in December, it's cold. And you're not winning like Ohio State, so you can't overcome the weather difference when you try to recruit the Southeast or Texas or California. On and on we go. National recruiting has killed Nebraska, and I don't think they're going to be able to get back unless they embrace a system and a coach and a model of consistency. Wisconsin is a good example. Iowa is a good example. They know who they are, right? Average quarterback play, big offensive lineman, power running, and really good defense. And they win 9-10 games every season on that. They've never been to the playoff. They'll never win a national title doing that. But that's their model, and that's what they want to do. Nebraska fans wanted Tom Osborne 60-0 blowouts in national championships. So the greed level there is 9-10 wins wasn't enough. We want more. And I don't know when they've come to the realization that more is not coming.
Could NIL balance some of this out?
No. Because kids don't understand. I honestly think that a quarterback in Lincoln, Nebraska, with that fan base, which is I think that the strongest fan base in the country, pound for pound.
Fair, you know what? Fair.
In the country. Yeah. That is their NFL team. They sell out. I mean, they get. The spring game is. It's every team's dream to have that attendance at a regular season game. The passion is beyond belief. and the support for the team is beyond belief. I think you can make more as a quarterback at Nebraska than you can at Miami or USC. But kids don't think that. Casey Thompson said there's better NIL opportunities in Nebraska than there were in Texas, and everybody laughed at him. He's right. But you have to be successful, and you have to have that kid that thinks, okay, I'm going to go to Nebraska and I'm going to make my money. And they get caught up in the bright lights and all the other stuff of the big city. And, here's Dr. Dre and Beats. And, here's Ruiz and $80 billion in Miami. They get caught up in that. So NIL, I thought, might be a potential, difference maker, but it's not, because kids don't listen. You can make a lot of money in Lincoln, Nebraska, a lot, if you're on a successful team and you're a successful player. But how many big-time 5-star, 4-star recruits are looking at that program? Very, very few, if any.
Well, and how many stay, right? I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson was there. He was doing really well, and he was like, I'm out of here for Kentucky, right? Even if you get them there for a year, right, and then they look around after that year and they go, okay, this isn't it for me, right? So how can you get them to stay is the other part. I mean, I think Frost has done a good job getting some of them on campus, but the exodus off campus has been pretty short term right after that.
Yeah, and that's also, that's winning. I mean, if Nebraska was winning, I think Wan'Dale Robinson would stay. And NIL money, if this was pre-NIL, obviously, if Wan'Dale Robinson was making big money on a winning Nebraska team, he's not going back to Kentucky. He's not going back home unless he's, obscenely homesick. I don't think you're losing a kid like that, but it all comes together. You can't be 3-9 and in a great fan market like that and keep kids and attract kids. You have to win, but which comes first? Does winning draw 4 and 5-star recruits and NIL deals? Or do you get the 4 and 5-star recruits and they're going to lead to winning? They're kind of in this, they're in the circle of crap, I call it, where the wheel is spinning and there's really only one little sliver there of success and they haven't hit it yet. And once they hit it, boom, jackpot. It's like a casino, then you're hooked. But until they hit it, and those bells go off, they're just going to be sitting there pulling the lever and pushing the button over and over again, and it's just not working.
All right. Well, speaking of something that wasn't working, Mike, we were trying this Ask Mike thing at the end of the show, and that hasn't taken off. But here's what has taken off. Mike is pissed off. That has taken off because you've been out on social media. You've got a couple of little videos out there. By the way, this feels like a segment that is just dying for a sponsor, right? Mike is pissed off, sponsored by the Smart Car or whatever it is that's out there. So I think this is definitely a sponsorable segment out there. Whatever it is, find Mike M. Farrell all over Twitter. You can find Mike. Sponsor this segment because Mike is pissed off. Mike, I know there's some things you're pissed off about today. Some college football and sports related, some non. First things first. It's hot where you are, no?
Yeah. And I tell you why I came up with this is because, it's not like I'm always pissed off and everybody who knows me knows that I am. But I saw the negativity. I saw I put up something about Arch Manning, it goes viral. I put up something about, but Caleb Williams, it goes viral. And then I tested it out and I put up something positive about Anthony Richardson, right? And crickets. And I was like, this is just the world we live in. Everybody's angry. So why am I pretending not to be? I'm just going to share that with people.
Wait, you were pretending not to be angry?
Yeah. That was me pretending.
Okay.
That was the nice me.
Well played.
So yesterday, it was 95. And it makes me very cranky because I don't even know. There was this, have you seen the new Jackass movie?
I have not, no.
Okay. So there was something, my buddy told me about this yesterday. Apparently there's a big fat guy. And
back to the fat guy. Here we go.
Well, listen, I'm a big fat guy.
Pissed off Mike, sponsored by Weight Watchers.
Heat and fat don't go together.
Fair.
So what they did is they wrapped them in cellophane and they put them in a sauna, or they let them bake in the heat in the 100-degree weather or whatever. And then they unwrapped them and he was just sweating like crazy. And then they used his butt as a sushi slide. And that's how I felt yesterday. Sushi slide butt.
Yeah. I mean, that's a visual that I think we'll leave for the audience to figure out. I'm more concerned. You had Well, it makes me angry too thinking about it. I'm more concerned. You filmed a video from like a clubhouse at your place there, and there was a fly. Did you ever get that fly?
Nope.
Did that ever get worked out for you?
No, I
Because
think
that pissed me off. Because I could see the fly was bothering you, and you were trying to get into your rant, and there was this thing moving around, and I was mad for you in that situation.
Here's what else bothered me about that too is like I've moved, so I'm living in a great complex. It's got a clubhouse and it's got a little office area and it's got a golf simulator and it's got a pond and everything's beautiful. But the office is kind of like it's got a table which is shareable and it's got a couch and a chair. But it's not shareable. It's small enough where you're not going to go in there. It's very uncomfortable to work with someone else that you don't know. And there's one guy in there all the time, every day. And I don't know what time he gets there. But, when I roll down there at 11 o'clock and I want to work, he's in there. And he's never not in there. So this opportunity I got, he wasn't in there. I'm like, I don't know, maybe he fell in the pond or something. I was pretty happy. I got in there, closed the door, and then there's a goddamn fly. Yeah. And the fly's like hovering around. And I'm like, and then there's people like slowly walking by the door, looking in like they want to come in. And I'm trying to do this. So it was very distracting. Yeah. I like that place. I do. I like my helmets, but I like that place, a little bit better to do rants. But here's another one. Last week, it was hot last week too. And I'm a golfer. I'm not a good golfer at all. I got my swim juice hat.
Oh, there we go.
But I was walking 9 holes, which I shouldn't be doing. I should be in a cart or a smart car.
Or a smart car. And by yourself though, not multiple
bogey,
people.
Bogey,
ooh,
birdie, par, birdie.
Oh,
that doesn't happen to me. Okay. And then it got too hot and I had to stop after 4. I went up a hill and I just couldn't catch my breath. And so if anybody remembers the movie Caddyshack, the guy has the round of his life, and he's pouring and it's lightning and he drains every putt. He drains the last putt on top of a frog in the hole, and then he gets struck by lightning and dies. That was kind of my week last week where I was like I should have been on the open, I was killing it. And then my physical conditioning led to me stopping. All of these things should be a wake-up call, you think, for me?
It sounds like you're aware of them, though. I mean, so,
awareness
you're not in denial, at least,
It doesn't. Awareness doesn't put salads in front of you, and it doesn't make it taste better.
Yeah, that's fair.
That should be a bumper sticker. Awareness doesn't put salads in front of you.
We learned a lot. We've also learned there's no ocean in Nebraska, which I checked it out while you were talking. That's actually true. I can confirm no ocean in Nebraska. So this is not only a sports show, it's an educational platform. Like you love golf. I got to get your golf take. Obviously, the Open Championship, which AKA used to be the British Open, but now we don't call it that anymore. Who knows why? Rory McIlroy was in position to win. Shoots a decent round, just doesn't score low enough. Cam Smith comes out of nowhere in the back 9 and just lights it on fire, comes out with the claret jug, and now he's going maybe to the Live Golf Tour. I don't really know what's going on there. Let me get your overall take. Did Rory choke, or did Cam Smith just have one of those like out of world performances that no matter who you were, you weren't stopping him?
Yeah, I watched 2016 Open highlights, the Phil Mickelson versus Stenson battle, which is pretty infamous,
Which now a live golf exclusive at this point.
Well, they played it, I think, because Stenson, got stripped of his Ryder Cup captaincy and all this other stuff. So, but it was really one of the most epic 1-2 battles, and each person, hit a great shot, and nobody choked. It was just Stenson played better. Cam Smith played better. He just did. Rory didn't play bad. He didn't quad a hole. He didn't, he wasn't OB. His putts were on. I mean, one of them just stopped rolling within that, and he missed by a couple inches here and there. Cam Smith's putting was just unstoppable, unbelievable, and you're just not going to beat a guy who could putt like that at the Open. So, I was happy for Cam Smith. He's a guy I should really idolize. He lost 40 pounds by giving up peanut butter beer and something else, meat pies. And he used to be chubby, and now he's thin and has helped his golf game and all that stuff. Rory is awesome. I like Rory. I was rooting for Rory. He'll win one this year. I mean, this year the majors are over, but he was top 10 in all four, I believe.
Yeah, he was.
You know, and his game seems to be back, so he'll be fine. While this occurred, I got a couple drop down notifications. Kirby Smart just signed I believe, $125 million contract extension in Georgia.
Okay.
10 years. Which
Wow.
is, you know, we were talking about Bo Pelini being fired while that came through. And, you know, listen, smart move. Deserves it. Guy's going to recruit great forever.
Pun intended, yeah.
Have Georgie just, I mean, he's what Mark Richt was supposed to be. And it's working out well for him. And then Hideki, I think it is Hideki Matsuyama at the 3M. Today's the first day of the 3M. I think he put 3 in the water on 18 for a quad. I've done that. I've done that. I'm in a league every Thursday night, and I was, for the first 5 holes, I was like par, bogey, par, 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 which for me is crazy because I'm a 9 or 10 handicap over 9 holes. I'm a bogey golfer. And then the par 3 over the water, over chip, putt, 9 on a 3 after that start. That's golf.
It's not good though.
Rips your heart out. So, but I love talking about it. I'd rather talk about that than sushi slides.
I'd rather you do that as well. Yeah, I'd rather you do that as well.
I haven't seen Jackass, so it wasn't me that brought this up. It was.
It kind of was. So I mean, in this construct, it wasn't. There was no audience question. Also, a fun fact: I actually live in Ponte Vedra, so I live 10 minutes away from Cam Smith. I can actually drive past his house, and I live 12 minutes from TPC Sawgrass. So if you're in Ponte Vedra, Cam Smith just hangs out and walks around all the time. If you're down by Jacksonville Beach, you can see, you can't miss the mullet. So he's super identifiable around these parts.
I definitely want to play Sawgrass someday. It's
nice.
It destroy me, but I definitely want to play that course. And
have you been to the Players yet?
Oh,
I've
been nowhere.
You got to get to 17. You got to get on 17.
I played my locals, and the most famous course I played is Leatherstocking up in Cooperstown, New York. I play that every year. I've never played a real course. I mean, it'd be nice. My buddy paid, I don't know, $400 to play Pebble Beach once. That'd be nice. But you know what? I got to actually go there. I don't want to go to, you know, Orlando. I don't want to go to Ponte Verde. I don't want to sit in an airport anymore. I did that for 30 years, waiting for flight delay after flight delay, and then getting trapped from thunderstorms and never getting home.
Seems unlikely they're bringing the course to you though. So we'll have to figure out a way to get you to play.
I have a simulator with Sawgrass on it.
Okay. That's all you need, Mike. It's been a blast. Obviously, a lot of stuff going on in the college football world. Make sure you're following Mike on social media, Farrell Sports. His website, MikeFarrellSports.com, obviously is where you can get all these articles. I mean, there's like 5, 6, 7 articles a day. You got some lists he's putting out there. There's a lot of content from Mike and his team. They're doing a fantastic job. If you want to keep yourself up to date with college sports and college football specifically, MikeFarrellSports.com is where you want to go. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast feed at the Believe Network as well, and check out Twitter. More Pissed Off Mike probably coming soon. I imagine that we're going to end this, and I imagine you'll see a Pissed Off Mike in like 3 minutes after this.
Maybe, or today for sure.
Okay.
Because I got to get a haircut. I hate that. I have my league tonight. I hate that.
Okay.
So yeah, there'll be a lot of stuff coming up.
What's with hair? You like haircuts?
I hate haircuts. I'm just sitting around waiting.
You just have a hat on all the time though. Does it matter?
It does, because it puffs.
It puffs.
It gets wingy.
Okay.
And if I took the hat off, it would just be like an airbag, you know?
Back to smart cars. Here we go. I mean, again, if smart car isn't a sponsor by next week, Mike, we're doing it wrong. I don't know what to tell you.
I could kill somebody if I took the hat off. Just not good.
Let's not do that. A lot of death, a lot of smart cars, a lot of other stuff. But this is the Mike Farrell Sports Experience. Thank you for tuning in again. Make sure you're following along and check us out probably next week. Until then, everybody be safe. Take care of each other. We'll see you around.